I believe now we're ready to start session two. Good morning, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the 2023 World Bio Summit. And today we'll start today's event with session two. So, session two, we'll be talking about accelerating pandemic therapeutics development and manufacturing. And before we commence, we'd like to extend our sincere gratitude to all of you who are joining us today despite their busy schedules. Once again, thank you very much for your participation. So today, we'll be listening to a variety of meaningful presentations on the current status and future prospects of new technologies for therapeutics development, manufacturing, and supply, and as well as global research cooperation for accelerating the therapeutics development and strengthening capacity for the next pandemic as well. And this event is designed to share the latest trends in this field and to foster collaboration among researchers from home and abroad. And ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to your active participation and insights shared through this discussion and presentations. Once again, for your information, channel 1 is for Korean, channel 2 is for English. So please use your receivers on your tables if you need any translation service, Korean or English. And ladies and gentlemen, session 2 is hosted by the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency. And then this morning, Commissioner Ji Young-mi is gracing us with the presence. So why don't we welcome her with a big round of applause? 네, 청장님 잠시만 일어나 주시고 저희 박수 한번 받아주시죠. Once again, please give a big round of applause. Thank you. 네, 고맙습니다. 또 귀한 시간 내서 직접 현장에 찾아주셨습니다. Thank you once again to Commissioner Ji for joining us today. And now I'd like to introduce the Director General Chang Hee-chang of the Korean National Institute of Infectious Disease. Now please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Yeah, good morning, every presenters and participants. I'm the director of National Institute of Infectious Diseases, affiliated to KNIH and KDCA. First of all, it is my pleasure to meet leaders representing countries, international organizations, and companies from around the world at the session of therapeutic development and manufacturing on the second day. And special thanks to the present preparers, including the officials of the Ministry of Health and Welfare and National Institute of Infectious Diseases and KDCA, as well as Laurent Musser, Director General of the HERA, who served as a moderator today. Thank you to all the speakers as well. I think everyone here will agree that the next pandemic is soon coming, and the pandemic response is not a problem limited to one country, but is something that entire world must respond to jointly. While experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic, several countries around the world have succeeded in developing and producing therapeutics, including Korea, but there is still much room for the improvement in the speed of development and mass production. In addition, the next pandemic response will be effective only when more countries can develop and produce the therapeutics, but there are still many unresolved issues. In particular, in a situation where the frequency of new emerging infectious diseases is increasing due to various factors such as climate change and urbanization, we are grateful for providing a venue to share the latest research under the theme of promoting the development and manufacturing of infectious disease therapeutics in preparation for next pandemic. I think this is very timely. So this section, we expect to share each country's COVID-19 therapeutic development process and international cooperation experience in the field over the past 3 years, and discuss ways to increase each country's capabilities at each stage of therapeutic research, development, and manufacturing. We expect that global strategies and cooperation measures that can maximize the acceleration of therapeutics R&D will also be derived here. Lastly, I hope that this event will lead to practical cooperation between governments, international organizations, private foundations and corporations, and lay the foundation for a more rapid and effective response to future outbreak of emerging infectious diseases. I again would like to express deepest gratitude to those who prepared this event for their hard work, and I wish everyone who participated in here good health and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give a big round of applause. Thank you, Director General Chang, for opening up session 2. Next, we will invite our chair and our esteemed panelists up onto the stage. So first and foremost, we'd like to welcome Mr. Laurent Mouchel, Acting Director General in European Health Emergency Preparedness and Response Authority. Let's welcome him with a big round of applause. Thank you. So today he'll be leading the session, but for a brief introduction, our esteemed moderator, Acting Director General Laurent Mouchel of the European Health Emergency Response Agency, beforehand served as Director for Internal Security in the Directorate General for Home Affairs in the European Commission. He was also the Director for Migration and Protection and also served as the Deputy Head of Cabinet of the Commissioner for Home Affairs and the Vice President of the European Commission for Justice, Freedom, and Security as well. And next, we'd like to welcome our esteemed panelists. First, I'm delighted to welcome Ms. Carmen Perez Casas, Senior Technical Lead and Head of Pandemic Prevention, Preparedness, and Resource of UNITAID. Please welcome her. Thank you. And next, we're joined by Dr. Ji Chui Dong, Unit Head of WHO Local Production and Assistant Unit. Please come up to the stage and let's welcome her with a big round of applause. And today, we're joined by Dr. Buk Hyun-sang, CEO of Korea Drug Development Fund, but he will be joining us shortly. So once he comes here at the venue, I will introduce him. And next, Dr. Seamus O'Brien, R&D Director of Global Antibiotic Research and Development Partnership, is joining us. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. Thank you. And next, Dr. Lee Soo-young, Senior Vice President of Celltrion, is joining us today. Please come up to the stage and let's welcome him as well. Thank you. And last but not least, we do have a Professor Petro Toblinsh, Chief Executive Officer of Afrigen Biologics. Please come up to the stage. Let's welcome her with a big round of applause. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for sharing your insight today. And now we're ready to pass over the microphone to our moderator. So please lead the session. You have the floor.
Yes, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure and honor to moderate this second session of the Bio Summit. We'll focus on three topics linked to therapeutics. The first one is how to strengthen capacities for pandemic preparedness and response. The second one is to look at the current trends in therapeutics development, manufacturing, and supply. And the third one will be on global research cooperation. We know that during COVID-19, therapeutics was not the main element. There was a lot of focus on vaccine developments. But however, therapeutics played a very important role to save lives. We don't know what will happen with the next pandemics. Maybe we will not have any vaccine. Look at what happened with TB, malaria, HIV. We are still waiting for an efficient vaccine. So therapeutics has a key role to play, and we need to continue to focus our development on therapeutics. And what we are facing, and you all know that, is a lot of market failure. We are also talking about the valley of death, and there's a key role for public development, for public support in the therapeutics field. And that's something also that we need to discuss. During the pandemic, at European level, we have decided to create MyDG, HERA, the Health Emergency Response Authority, precisely to answer to these challenges, to make sure that we have the right medical countermeasures when needed. And we are putting a lot of money there, but that's never enough. and we need to work together globally in cooperation. It's not about supporting European companies by the European Union or US company by BARDA, and so on and so forth. It's about joint cooperation to make sure that we have the new molecules on the market, that we have the new vaccine and therapeutics available when needed. And that's really a big challenge that we will focus on today. So without further ado, I would like to start by welcoming Carmen Perez-Casas, who is a senior technical lead and head of pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response at UNITAID. She will focus on the role of therapeutics in pandemics and the question of access. Carmen, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Annyeonghaseyo, everybody. Good morning. And first of all, I would like to thank the Ministry of Health and Welfare and the Government of Korea for hosting us here for the second time in this very innovative and very useful forum where we can all discuss together, private sector with governments, countries, with users. Thank you very much, and thank you for KDCA also for organizing this session. So I'm Carmen Perez-Casas, I'm head of pandemic preparedness in UNITAID, a global health agency based in WHO. Based in Geneva, hosted by WHO. So I think I'm gonna be able to, wait a second, the instructions, here it is. So millions of people, as we all know, in low and middle income countries are dying every year from preventable, treatable diseases because they can't access the life-saving health tools that can protect them. UNITAID was created in 2006 to address this inequality. We work to make innovation available and affordable for people who need them, wherever they are. And we try to do that as fast as possible. In pandemics, speed is also, of course, of extreme importance. We have unlocked access to more than 100 groundbreaking tools that are now becoming the gold standard for management of HIV and co-infections, tuberculosis, malaria, or women's and child health, and more recently as well for pandemic. Indeed, during COVID-19, we applied our expertise to address also the critical access to life-saving medicines, life-saving oxygen, as well as diagnostics in low and middle income countries. And we were leading in the ACT-A, the Access to Tools, to COVID Tools Accelerator, including a particular role as leaders of the therapeutics pillar. And that's why today we would like to share some of the lessons learned in therapeutics in particular, that as the moderator kindly reminded us are as well very important, and that those lessons learned that need to be taken into account now before it's too late for the next pandemic. So first of all, in COVID-19, we saw, as you already said, very few therapeutic candidates emerging from the pipeline. There was most attention to other tools, and this medical countermeasure had received not enough attention. And actually, in low and middle income countries, the few therapeutics that became available for COVID-19 were only made available in those countries almost 2 years after the epidemic was declared, the pandemic. That's too late to make any public health impact. So looking at those inequalities and their root causes, we have found actually opportunities for expediting and improving things in each of the steps on the value chain, from research and development to regulatory, manufacturing and supply, or finally on the country uptake. And we have documented it in different documents in our website. Today, for the sake of time, I will only give some high-level points on those, but very happy to expand as needed. And why it's important to look at each of the value steps and all of them together, because actually we need to avoid working in silos, in compartments. We need to have the end goal, that is the patient, when we are working on the research and development from the beginning, starting by R&D. Innovation alone, if it remains isolated, will not help for access. It has to be connected with the rest of the value chain. It didn't work. applying our access lens to all the steps on the value chain, we can indeed shape now plans for the future. So in R&D, for a start, we saw a fragmented and inefficient and insufficient research in therapeutics in COVID. First of all, a problem was the lack of pre-pandemic funding for new technologies, new platforms, new mechanisms, and new models. Compared with vaccines, where there had been decades of innovation prior to the pandemic, difference is very significant. And it's worthy reminding that therapeutics funding during COVID was, for research, 20 times less than for vaccines. So yes, there are initiatives ongoing, as the moderator alluded to, by European Union, by the United States, etc., and other governments, but we do need more funding. Also, as well, there were many inefficiencies in clinical trials, as we know, and as in the slide we reminded, we need to support a coordinated clinical, global and regional evaluation capacity. In addition, we know that without access, there will be, as I said before, no impact for the research. So very importantly, access needs to be taken into account when preparing for our research plan. And we need to start at this stage as well, thinking on the manufacturability at capacity to actually bring the product to scale. So in a nutshell, this step of R&D is critical. Without products, we cannot have access, but it has to be connected, and we need to correct all the inefficiencies we saw before. Very quickly, moving to the next step in the regulatory approaches, it was so well discussed yesterday that I'm going to be quick on this one, but obviously, as we heard yesterday, there are many inefficiencies yet at global, but also at country level, that will need to be improved in order to get an efficient, coordinated, and expedited authorization processes that can be leveraged during pandemics, and they have to be established now. Moving to manufacturing and supply, in COVID-19, we also saw limited product volumes and very high prices for low and middle-income countries. And geographical concentration of manufacturing actually exacerbated issues also for other therapeutics, as you know, due to logistics, beyond those needs of COVID-19. So establishing a scalable manufacturing capacity in low and middle-income countries for therapeutics is of utmost importance, and I will come back to that. In addition, access needs, in parallel to global burden, must be anticipated for all countries. For example, in COVID, you know that the manufacturers of oral antivirals quickly signed voluntary licensing for generic production of low-cost products for low and middle-income countries, with the Medicines Patent Pool, an organization funded by UNITAID 10 years ago. However, key geographical areas were not able to access the generics, where burden was very high, and overall, the lack of market certainty in pandemics, as was reminded yesterday with the example of cholera vaccine, is a problem we need to address with funding at risk as well, if we want to ensure that manufacturers can actually plan adequately. If we think now finally on the delivering and adoption on low and middle-income countries, there are further delays that were caused by the lack of readiness in those countries. Treatments were mostly coming late, as I said before, but also the lack of a strategic coordination with other tools further delayed the issues. In UNITAID, for example, together with FIND, Global Fund, and many other partners, and of course WHO, we started pilots on test and treat in many countries, but due to the lack of tools, these were, as I said, not enough impactful. So we need to work for pandemic preparedness as well, very much in an inclusive way, with all communities and members of all in the national stakeholders. Let me zoom briefly on the capacities. As I was saying before, we really need to fill in the capacities that are lacking for research and development, for manufacturing and supply, and of course for a country adoption in parallel. But clearly, such capacity must be sustainable in the absence of a pandemic. It was also alluded by some speakers yesterday, this point. And in UNITAID, we take it very seriously. We are doing now dual purpose investments, which means We are addressing now with regional manufacturer improvement persistent needs in major public health conditions like HIV, malaria, tuberculosis, that can also at the same time support preparedness for pandemics. Investments that allow to pivot production, if need be, to pandemic, for diagnostics, for therapeutics, because we will not be able to do so if we don't sustain those investments in between the pandemics. So preparedness work is key. It will enable a faster and more equitable response, also in low and middle income countries, if we were able to get something like in each of these steps, an 80% of preparedness, for example, that could bring us to a quick response whenever that comes to be needed. So we could apply the preparedness in all these to whichever pandemic comes. Starting by innovation, although as we said before, it needs to happen in parallel to many other steps, and thinking already from now on manufacturing for the priority products, for trials and for a scale-up before it's too late. And otherwise, we believe that a 100 days mission or 200 days will not be possible if we are not ready. I would like to move now, before I close these introductory remarks, to a particular topic, and that is monoclonal antibodies, that I know is very close to all of us. So I would like to highlight it because it's actually one of those therapeutics that suffer from real severe access problems. They are believed to be a powerful tool in health emergencies, and they also have very big implications in other global health issues. They are transforming antibodies, modern medicine, as you know, in high-income countries for cancer or autoimmune disorders, and they hold great promise for infectious diseases as well, with some products approved already, like the respiratory syncytial virus or Ebola, and others in the pipeline for malaria, for HIV, for example. And in addition, as we said, they could be one of the quickest medical countermeasures that can appear in pandemics, especially until vaccines are developed or where there are no vaccines. They can complement them. So due to their high potential, they are one of the targets of the 100 Days Mission for therapeutics. However, very severe barriers, as I said, need to be addressed in order for these products to be accessible in low and middle income countries. Today, the entire African region makes less than 1% of the total market of monoclonal antibodies. And this unbalanced market is not reflected the disease burden, as you can imagine. To start with, as in the slide, most antibodies are so far complex to use, requiring infusions or cold chain. And very importantly, on the second barrier on this slide, prices are very high. Treatments cost, you know, can exceed $10,000 per month in chronic diseases, and even when there are generics, they are also out of reach still, with lack of economies of scale, with high cost and complex production, which will need to be addressed, the manufacturability complexity, in order to render them more affordable. Of critical importance moving forward is also the supply capacity for key antibodies. During COVID, we saw that for the antibodies that were emerging, there was no sufficient global capacity to produce them for every needs, and eventually they weren't made available in low and middle income countries. We need to think now on the technology transfer and the capacity to expand manufacturing, because it takes very long in biologics, and because tech transfer, as you know, is key in this case, more than for small molecules even. So finally, monoclonals also face complex regulatory pathways, which are yet to be harmonized, and we will need to build capacity as well in low and middle income countries in parallel to increasing production. And finally, there is little to no awareness, and gaps remain in understanding how to use them in low and middle income countries, and we are happy to commit to support on that. In March this year, we actually held a large consultation in Geneva around these topics, bringing together more than 100 stakeholders from public and private sectors, and Korean representation was very important. A report summarizing the findings is available on the website, so let me skip it, but just to highlight that main topics that we heard from experts were the need for partnerships, for novel business models, novel ways to collaborate together to ensure that there is expanded production with tech transfer, but also expanded capacity for clinical trials and collaboration across the board. So what are those business models that can enable development and production for equitable monoclonal antibodies? So just concluding, what is evident from our vision, from this vision, is that access cannot be an afterthought. And an end-to-end approach is required for fit-for-purpose therapeutics to get to low- and middle-income countries. We need to secure access-focused financing for research and development, to advance financing to manufacturers, to rapidly secure volumes for low- and middle-income countries. We need to fill in capacities, gap capacities now to avoid delays at the global marketplace and in parallel at the country level, and strategically coordinate across all medical countermeasures, whether vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics, to have actually impact. Indeed, the impact of our collective efforts depend on access to these products. So thank you very much. Just I led you with these words that we really need to be prepared. We need to be innovative in terms of business models and collaboration and across all sectors. Rationale, I think, is strong, and I think we are all agreeing on that. So let's act now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And sorry for the interruption, but ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome our esteemed speaker. So now please join me in welcoming Dr. Buk Hyun-sang, CEO of Korea Drug Development Fund. So please welcome him before we meet our next presenter. And over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice music. I'm glad to see that the panel is now complete, so welcome. And thank you, Carmen, for this very interesting presentation and on the challenges for the development of new therapeutics. I would like now to welcome Dr. Ji-Kui Dong. I hope I pronounce it correctly. So Dr. Dong is the head of unit for the local production and assistance at WHO, and she will present us the issue of further strengthening accessibility of therapeutic and the question of manufacturing capacity. Dr. Dong, please.
Good morning, everyone. First, let me thank the organizer for this very kind invitation. So today we are talking about access, talking about manufacturing capacity. So the access issue is complex. Timely and equitable access is even more complex. There are so many factors contribute this complexity. An aging population, the rising burden of a non-communicable disease, the lack of affordability, and the shrinking of a physical space, so insufficient R&D and the production capacity. So what we learned from COVID-19 pandemic, the over-concentrated production capacity in few regions and countries. So I just name a few on this slide. Access to health products is a key component to universal health coverage and to achieve the targets of SDGs. So access has been the subject for WHO, the World Health Assembly, for almost 100 World Health Assembly resolutions and decisions. So you can see access is such an important issue. I just lead some of the resolutions on the slide. So what is access? Carmen just said, access is not afterthought. Wonderful. So actually there are two components to measure the accessibility. Number one is availability. Number two is affordability. access is constrained when there's a three condition. So health products are available but not affordable. There's no access, enough access. When the health products are affordable but not available, the same situation. Access is constrained. Or the health products are neither affordable nor available. So you must have the two conditions. The health products are available and affordable. Look at this pharmaceutical value chain, which show a long road for access, from R&D to production, marketing authorization, to pricing, supply chain, and the end use. There are so many factors along this value chain to affect affordability and availability. For instance, if there's unmatched demand and the supply, if the demand exceeds the supply, there must be a shortage. So we don't have availability. And we're talking about a lot on the national, regional pricing policy. If the medicines is available but so expensive, then they have affordability issue. So WHO has been working very hard to support member states to improve access. Some effort are showed on this slide. For instance, WHO strengthening pricing policies at the national and the regional level. WHO published WHO model list of essential medicines to guide member states to ensure to access essential health product timely. And also WHO strengthening regulatory system, boosting regulatory reliance, convergence, and harmonization. Last but not least, strengthening the local production and technology transfer. Strengthening local production technology transfer to improve access, which is not a new concept. 2028, WHO adopted a resolution, which is Global Strategy and the Plan of Action on Public Health Innovation and Intellectual Property. In this resolution, it is highlighted local production technology transfer could be a way to improve access. So if you see local production, in fact, contribute the entire pharmaceutical value chains. So can stimulate R&D and the need-based innovation. And let me see its work, so now, okay. And build capacity for manufacturing, address shortage and the local need through strategic selection of product to be produced. And also shorten lead time in the supply chain, improve availability for procurement and supply, and improve affordability when the economies of scale achieved. Last but not least, through local production technology transfer can boost national or regional knowledge-based economy. We are talking about there has been more than almost 100 WHO resolutions and decisions talking about access. There's one important resolution, which is on strengthening local production of medicines and health products to improve access, which is WHA 74.6, which was adopted in 2021 during the pandemic, and co-sponsored by more than 100 member states. So in this resolution, it is highlighted strengthening local production and technology transfer to improve access timely and equitably. So WHO has been promoting local production and technology transfer for many years. It's not something new. And there's a routine program. It's called the Local Production and Technical Assistance, which is located in the Department of Regulation and Pre-Qualification. My director, Dr. Gaspar, yesterday made a presentation. So what do we do on behalf of WHO to support you, manufacturers and member states? So we are supported, strengthened further by WHO 74.6. Our activity can be grouped into 3 big categories. Number 1, global coordination and partnership, under which we have interagency consultation and interagency statement and World Local Production Forum. Number 2, regional and country support and technology transfer. We do the holistic approach to promote local production at the country and the regional level. And also we build a lot of capacity building, provide tailored technical assistance, develop a lot of resources on local production and technology transfer. And the third area is PQ, pre-qualification, and EOL, emergency use listing related specialized technical assistance. So let me show you what does mean local production. Now, because a lot of people mention regional production, actually there's a definition in the first interagency statement, which is talking about local production means local, refer to geographical location, can be national or regional. Production refer to all the activities along the pharmaceutical value chain. So from this definition, actually you can see local production include both national and regional production. So as I said, the WHO support member states conduct ecosystem assessment to identify gaps and also provide evidence for the government to take the prioritized action to build conducive ecosystem to ensure quality and sustainable local production to benefit the public health need. And also the result of ecosystem assessment can inform the further development of a country, national or regional strategy to strengthen local production to improve access. So we did a full package of training activities. Since 2022, we organize a yearly GMP training marathon. So with the topic progressively in depth and in the topic of GMP, different domains. And this year, we create a new program. It's called Week of Quality, which focuses on the specification to complement the existing GMP training marathon. We also organize like holistic training workshop for different regions, which is a tailored whole package training from patent, licensing, policy, regulatory affairs, GMP, procurement, so to tailor each region context to have this holistic approach to promote local production. The last but not least, as you all know, this is new WHO initiative, Global Training Hub for Biomanufacturing, which we need to thank Republic of Korea. The Ministry of Health and Welfare holds this program and work very closely with WHO Academy and WHO Technical Unit, which is a Department of Regulation and Pre-Qualification. So we said WHO provided specialized technical assistance to speed up the process to attend WPQ and EOL. So what do? We provide QMS audit, mock GMP inspection. We also work with manufacturing on the product development phase, CMC. We also help manufacturer to prepare the dossier to apply WPQ EOL. This service is independent of the PQ service. We are two units under the same director, but we work independently to avoid conflict interest. We also worked very closely in technology transfer. We developed resources, what you see is the updated guideline, which was published recently. And also we provide the technical assistance to support the member state and the manufacturer to boost the capacity for the technology transfer and absorb the technology. During the pandemic, WHO also created two new initiatives. One is mRNA Technology Transfer Hub. I'm sure Dr. Pedros will give more comprehensive description on this wonderful activity. And also we have CTAP. The name is COVID-19 Technology Access Pro. Okay, we're talking about where we have a role of a global coordination and partnership. Just 2 weeks ago in The Hague, the Netherlands, we had our second World Local Production Forum. So the first one was organized in 2021, which was virtually. And second one is hybrid. So we have more than 100 member states with the global community, industries, academies, agencies, development partners join this forum. So it indeed is a global sustainable forum for all of us to shape strategy and to have stimulate the collective action. There are four outcomes from the forum, the second World Local Production Forum. You can see the first one is to address information gap. So encourage WHO and partners to work on the data collecting. And the second one is based on creating national, regional, and global ecosystem, leveraging the existing partnership. The number three is establish sustainable, affordable financing mechanism. Number four is on capacity buildings. So also with these outcomes, we also have a potential two project. The number one is working with UNITAID and NIPID to build up a platform which is called the Health Products Manufacturing Support Platform, work on the API and the IVDs for the therapeutic products to improve access. And the second one is WHO will work with IFC and other partners to perform the mapping exercise on local production technology transfer. So this is the end aside. We need a collective effort to promote access. And promoting local production technology transfer is one of the means to achieve our collective goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dong, for explaining us the role of WHO in local production. The EU on its side is putting now 1.1 billion euros to support local manufacturing in Africa, and we look forward to our cooperation with WHO. Let me now give the floor to Dr. Mook, who is the CEO of the Korean Drug Development Fund, KDDF, and he will talk about the lessons learned from the pandemic and how to prevent the next one. Dr. Mook, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your kind introductions. First of all, I'd like to express my sincere thanks to the organizer of this, the Bio Summit. It's a very difficult job to organize this type of a global the conference. So from now on, I'd like to tell the experience I have learned from the pandemic. So this is my picture, much younger than it appears. So I'm the CEO and president of a Korea Drug Development Fund. This fund was created by a Korean government. So three ministry invested equal amount of money to us. So for 10 years, from the 2021 through 2030, during 10 years, we will utilize the 1.5 billion US dollars budget already allocated. And our goal is 4 innovative drugs approved by FDA or EMA, and amongst them, the last target, amongst them, just one blockbuster drug should be created. The definition of a blockbuster drug is, as you know, the annual turnover is greater than US $1 billion a year. So that's a very ambitious target we have at this moment. Then our activity is we support academia and biotech and or domestic pharmaceutical companies to create new drugs, innovative new drugs. So to accomplish this goal, we have a very elaborated and very sophisticated screening processes. So the 3 processes is in front of the box is the most important point. The peer review, 2 steps peer review and due diligence, and we have a special committees to decide the investment or not. So we call it investment decision committee. So based upon this type of experience and a lot of scientists and decision-making personnel who has an experience of investment industries. So we started support the COVID-19 vaccines and or therapeutics. So as you know, this one is a 100 days missions. It's very ambitious and very good the mission for the treating the COVID-19 like new virus attacks. So I'd like to tell the main focus of the 100 days missions. So I think that the 4 pillars is required to support the security from the virus attack. The first one is, the first one is, as you know, the diagnosis. But we are not talking about the surveillance network global. So the most important point is surveillance network globally. We should create this type of surveillance network. The second is vaccines. I will talk later. The third one is therapeutics. The fourth is emergency treatment therapeutics. So my focus is on therapeutics. The first one, the diagnosis, is very straightforward. The government should support all the private sectors and encourage them to develop. But this is not be talked much about that. This type of the surveillance network to raise the red flags when it happened. The second is vaccines. Vaccine is a very good tool to fight against the virus, but the vaccine is not sufficient to prevent the new virus attacks because it takes too long time. Then immunogenicity is not to be expected 100%. The third one is anti-vaccinators. So still lots of anti-vaccine vaccinators are available, existed in the world. Then 100 days mission of CFP may work efficiently in the development of vaccines. But what's for the therapeutics? Vaccine took time, a lot of time. But during the time, the therapeutics will be very essential to protect from the virus attack. Then therapeutics, as you know, So a lot of therapeutics, a lot of means 5 to 6 therapeutics was developed during pandemic. So remdesivir, Paxlovid, Lagevrio, and Tamiflu is an old one, and the Shionogi and Iltong, the Korean company, work together, and that's Jocobar. So several therapeutics was developed to treat the COVID-19, but it's not enough to that. So last April of this year, the Nature Reviews of this drug discovery, it summarized the therapeutic strategy for the COVID-19, the progress and lessons learned. Then they covered more than 100 the strategies and 100 compounds to develop. So it's very important point. During pandemic, we just focus on the vaccines rather than developing of therapeutics. So from now on, we should talk about the vaccines more, the therapeutics more than vaccines. Then Pilapor is an emergency treatment. It's also very important because in case of emergency, we should get the remedy to cure the people, to save the life. So the main issue was this one, initial regimen of treatment, mostly drug repositioning. 100 days mission should talk about, mentioned about this one, but it's not enough because in the clinical trials of this emergency treatment, government should be, public should be a leader of this one. Good example is recovery trials of the UK government and the ACT or active in the US government. NIH lead this program. And the solidarity programs, the WHO did it very nicely. So this is a good example of how to create the emergency treatment. The emergency treatment is mostly the drug repositioning, repurposing. So I would focus on the accurate and correct readout of the result. The individual companies wanted to get the more money from the marketplace, so they tended to exaggerate the readouts. And they tended to tell the different truths of drug development. The second is to expedite the trials. The common comparator trial is very important. So this can be done by the public, especially the government or NIH in the States or WHO. So it's very important. And third one is the expedited treatment options be available. So we should focus on this one very seriously. So this is the end of my slide, the email address. If you have any suggestion or questions or comment, please send that to my email address. My name is sam.mook@kddef.org. KDDF is a Korea Drug Development. So please send an email. I have something to tell more, but during the panel discussions, I will tell the details of that because only 1 second left. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mook, for your presentation on the lesson learned from the pandemic and for keeping the time up to 1 second. I will now give the floor to Dr. O'Brien, who is the Research and Development Director at GARDP. GARDP stands for Global Antibiotic Research and Development Partnership. And of course, he will talk about antibiotic development and access issues. Dr. O'Brien, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Laurent, for the introduction, and I'd like to thank the organizers for the invitation to speak today. So what I'm going to talk about today is our integrated antibiotic development and access strategy or model to address the burden of antibiotic resistance and also hopefully to support pandemic preparedness. I think it's fair to say that antibiotics are one of the cornerstones of modern medicine. Without them, we wouldn't be able to reap the benefits of the technological advancements we've seen in modern medicine and surgery. And in that case, I think it's fair to say also that antibiotics are one of the cornerstones of pandemic preparedness as an essential medical countermeasure. So bacterial infections have a significant mortality and morbidity benefit, and that is mainly due to the fact that the antibiotics that we are using to treat them are failing, or we do not have antibiotics available to treat the infections. This data from the landmark GRAM study, which was published last year, and the data from 2019, demonstrated a number of key priorities for us that we need to focus on and actually bring forward action. First of all, it demonstrated where the highest level of burden due to antibiotic resistance, or AMR, and that was seen in certain regions. The highest levels seen in sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and Central and Eastern Europe. Also, there are a number of other territories listed on this slide with a significant burden, which is important to recognize. The other key priority it identified is that there are certain bacterial species which are really driving the burden of disease. And within the next level, there are certain resistant phenotypes or resistant pathogens which are driving the burden in certain countries, and that requires, so it's a very much a heterogeneous picture. I don't have the time to go into it in details, but what it really calls out as a priority is national and local focus in terms of prioritization. The other key priority identified is the burden is seen greatest in certain bacterial infection syndromes, such as lower respiratory and bloodstream infections. And the other key priority identified it was the focus on certain populations. And one of the observations this study made in 2019 was to say that 1 in 5 people who died due to antibiotic resistance or AMR were children under 5. So in GARP, we want to work with others to use this prioritization to really focus on a public health pathway to integrate development and access to bring forward treatment options to really address those priority infections that this study, for example, has identified. So from a prioritization perspective, I think we can build on the frameworks and the vehicles that the WHO already have, but I really want to call out the need for an international task force to really identify and call out what are the critical antibiotics we have now, which ones have been recently developed, and which ones are in development that we need to focus on in terms of this particular pathway. I know there's a lot of information on this slide, but I really want to just call out what are the key areas or gaps that we need to focus on in terms of this public health pathway. And this is a pathway we need to run in, particularly for new chemical entities, we need to run this concurrently with the classical drug development pathway and have objectives which are beyond a sort of classical approval in an FDA or EMA. So the key areas are clinical research or clinical development, not just to primary regulatory approval, but beyond that to demonstrate evidence to support appropriate and optimal use, and evidence in key populations, including in children. And a theme which I've heard a lot yesterday, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot today as well, is pharmaceutical development from API formulation development right through to final drug product, and with supporting a final transfer for tech transfer to production in countries with a high burden. Accelerated regulatory pathways were mentioned this morning also already by one of my colleagues, and very much focused on in the session yesterday. If we get all those elements right, we should be able to meet the priority unmet needs in terms of development and access to ensure sustainable effectiveness at the patient and population level. One of the key things to call out is the need for affordable, quality assured and sustainable manufacturing of antibiotics as countermeasures, the right evidence to support appropriate and optimal use, integrated in policies and guidelines at the national level, and maybe using the WHO Essential Medicines List as a supporting framework. So this is the GARP model. We have an integrated R&D access approach, understanding the public health needs and the public health constraints, very much working in public-private partnerships and some public-public-private partnerships, and underpinned by a number of development agreements. But a key part of those agreements are in and out licensing clauses, or in and out licensing clauses is the best way to describe it. What that means is, from an in-licensing, we're able to bring products in which we can develop as treatments and then out-license them to partners who could address some of the key access objectives, such as supply, manufacturing, and distribution. So the pathway is nothing without the critical antibiotics I'm talked about. So I just really, on this slide, just give you an example of the GARD-P portfolio, for example. Our portfolio is set up to address those priorities. We have two main disease area strategies. The main one is serous bacterial infections, which lead to sepsis. So this covers those priority infection syndromes I mentioned earlier. It also, what we want to do with this disease area strategy in this portfolio is also to cover the key populations of children, and particularly sepsis in neonates as an example. And we try to make sure it covers the priority pathogens that the WHO have identified. As you can see on this slide, yes, it does in those colored boxes, but the grayed out boxes, we still have some work to do. On the right-hand side is another key disease area strategy for us, in that sexually transmitted infections. Yes, this is an infection which is significantly a morbidity burden for vulnerable populations, but is a real test case, an example of the impact of drug resistance, because there are very few treatment options at all left for gonorrhea. Okay, so we need to work with industrial partners to make sure we have this integrated development and access approach. On the left-hand side of this slide, it covers a number of companies we work with on new chemical entities, the originator companies, and on the right-hand side, companies that we're working with on generic or existing antibiotics. One of the key messages from this slide are in the last two rows. What we want to do is to make sure we have the manufacturing rights embedded into these agreements, and also to include as much rights for commercialization and access in high-burden countries and the LMICs as possible. On the right-hand side, I just wanted to call out, because this is going to be my first case study coming up now shortly, is neonatal sepsis, where we've been focusing on certain antibiotics which are already available, which could potentially be used in combination to treat neonatal sepsis. Because at the moment, the antibiotics we use for neonatal sepsis are failing due to high levels of antibiotic resistance, and that includes the WHO recommended regimen. So we've been looking at an antibiotic called Flomexef, which has been around since 1988. It's only available in 4 countries in this region, and that's been a focus for us. And that leads us to the first case study. I've got a couple of minutes left. I'm trying to go through maybe two or three case studies in those couple of minutes. The first one is in neonatal sepsis. So what we're trying to do here is take a risk-based approach by focusing on the increasing product availability of antibiotics such as Flomexef, in this case, in parallel to conducting a very large international study. And I'm delighted to say we're working in collaboration with JL Pharma, who are based here in Seoul, and that's been supported by the Wright Foundation. I think that's announced today in a press release, so I'm really honored to say that, and I thank the Wright Foundation for all their support. There are 2 main work streams. The first work stream here in this collaboration is the international clinical trial. It's also supported by many other funders as well, because it's a very large study. And that's looking at these different combinations of existing generic antibiotics in new regimens to treat clinically diagnosed neonatal sepsis. The second work stream is where JL Pharma are mainly focusing. What we're doing here is to look at an improved, efficient API manufacturing process, and then finally, as a final objective, to transfer that to a manufacturer, hopefully in a high-burden country, and most likely in sub-Saharan Africa. The second case study, very quickly, is for a recently approved antibiotic, which covers a large number of the MDR, multi-drug-resistant pathogens, which I mentioned earlier. This is very much access-led, because it's recently approved, not available in all countries, and it has sufficient development needs also as well. This project is the first of its kind license agreement. GARD-P and Shionogi, who are based in Osaka in Japan. We signed an agreement in June 2022, which gives GARD-P rights to 135 countries, mostly lower and middle income. We're also working with Shionogi and the Clinton Health Access Initiative to address those 4 pillars that are on that slide. I'd like to finish my last 3 seconds to talk about zoliflodacin. Maybe not that relevant in terms of pandemic preparedness, but this is a case study for development and access partnership to bring forward a new treatment option. In this case, it's for drug-resistant gonorrhea. What we have done here is to bring forward significant public funding to support the development and access of this much-needed option. And we use that funding to lead the clinical development, particularly the pivotal phase 3, and also the final drug product process from API to drug product. And we were delighted to be able to announce at the beginning of November that the phase 3 study that we led demonstrated that we met the primary endpoint when we compared against the combination study, which is an international standard of care. And now we're moving on to support registration, particularly in 2 countries, Thailand and South Africa, who contributed over 60 to 70% of the patients recruited in that study. I apologize, I've gone, I think, a couple of seconds over. I'd like to thank all our donors for working with us to tackle antibiotic resistance together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. O'Brien, for your presentation on the role of GARDP on antibiotics. We were talking about access to low and middle income countries, and surprisingly, sometimes there's access issue also in rich countries. For instance, we have difficulty to access some new molecules, even in Europe, and I welcome the cooperation that we are setting up between ERA and GARDP for the future. Let me now give the floor to Dr. Soo-Young Lee, who is a Senior Vice President of Celltrion, and he will talk about therapeutics and strategic response for the next pandemic. The floor is yours.
At first, I would like to appreciate to have chance to present today. I'm happy to share a development experience of Lekirona, which is the mAb therapeutics against SARS-CoV-2. And also, I would like to share lessons learned from COVID-19 during the Lekirona development. And I would like to present antibody platform within Celltrion for future pandemics. Also, I would like to explain about the next gen in the US and preparedness of Korean government for future pandemics. As you know, the SARS-CoV-2 variant have transitioned from Alpha, Delta to Omicron, as shown in the slide. Like flu virus, SARS-CoV-2 becomes more transmissible, making them easier to evade through vaccination, and resulting in low fatality. Celltrion initiated development by blood collection of convalescent patient in February 2020. Final clone selection was executed by in vitro and in vivo efficacy test. And mass production for clinical trial has been executed in July 2020. Lekirona has been approved from MFDS based on the clinical phase 1/2 trials result. And also the EMA has approved Lekirona based on the clinical phase 3 result, which showed significant benefit in safety and efficacy profile. This slide is the summary of in vitro and in vivo test result of CTP59 and CTP63, CTP59 showed neutralizing efficacy in vivo model, although less potent in beta and delta in vitro study. Although CTP59 could not show neutralizing efficacy against Omicron variants, CTP63 could show strong neutralizing efficacy against Omicron variants. So CTP59 and CTP63 cocktail might be a potential mAb therapy for future pandemics. This slide is a summary of the clinical phase 2/3 trials. Legudanbimab met the primary efficacy endpoint of significant decrease in the risk of hospitalized or death. It reduced the risk by 72% in patients. Although the risk of decrease population up to day 28 versus placebo. In addition, compared to population reduced placebo, those treated with 40 milligram per kg legudanbimab experienced recovery, a minimum of 4.7 days earlier. This slide lessons learned from COVID-19. The rapid and efficient Leqirona development was possible by domestic and global collaboration, including NIH, CRIP, Postec Accelerator Lab, and Bureau Clinics. In CMC perspective, mass production for biosimilar product was applied to develop Leqirona. And EMA and MFDS shortened the review timeline by applying rolling review approach. However, there was a difficulty to sourcing the material, such as consumable for production due to the shortage of consumable, such as in pandemics. Also, recruiting patient was tough due to the patient quarantine according to their regulation. Therefore, Celltrion provide a home nursing service and a special transport service between home and the hospital during the clinical trial in Eastern Europe, North and South America. Korean government provide clinical trial cost by R&D fund, like Operation Warp Speed in US. Celltrion established antibody platform for next pandemic by collection of potential neutralizing mAb library construction, as shown in the figure. Especially CTP59 and CTP63 cocktail therapy showed a better PK profile and no safety concern by inhaled administration. Therefore, it might be a potential mAb therapy for future pandemics. Next-gen program in the within U.S. government is committed to support R&D fund. This program will be administered by BAA and the EGBAA program. EGBAA program focused on enhancing improvement of efficacy, formulation, and so on. Actually, it requires differentiation from current platform technology. On the other hand, the BAA program will provide the support for clinical stage vaccine and therapeutics. During the COVID-19, Korean government has produced a plan for future preparedness of future pandemics. As you can see, this plan includes monitoring global trends of latest technical platform against rapid evolution of infectious virus, strengthening R&D infrastructure, including GCL lab, BRC lab, manufacturing facility for mass production, and proactive monitoring of infectious virus and emerging infectious disease, and banking of potential therapeutic candidate, including antiviral, MAPS, and so on, and hospital for clinical trial against various infectious disease. Actually, these activities will be coordinated by NIH, IBS, KPEC, National Medical Center, and MFDS. Actually, the one it is prerequisite to maintain the R&D investment for this activity. So R&D fund will be invested from private and public sector over 400 billion Korea won. And currently, actually, government fund is invested for developing mRNA platform, mRNA vaccine, and antiviral, including MAPS. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. CEPI is talking about vaccine library, and I think you mentioned therapeutics bankings, and we should also develop similar approach and have some library for therapeutics for the preparedness for the next pandemic. I would now like to give the floor to Professor Petro Terblanche, who is the CEO of Afrigen Biologics, and he will continue to talk about mRNA technologies. Professor.
Good morning, and thank you to the organizers. I'm grateful to be part of this event. I'm going to share with you the WHO mRNA technology transfer program and how it resonates with the theme of this particular session: pandemic response in a quest for pandemic preparedness. My declarations: I am proudly associated with Afrigen Biologics, an African biotech company based in Cape Town. The history: during 2021, in the early days of vaccine inequalities and challenges to get vaccines to low and middle income countries, the WHO took a lead and established this program, which in a period of 12 months put a partnership together which straddles 4 continents, 15 companies, and also declared the Korean consortium for assisting us in building the critical skills and capacity to support the technical development of diversification of local manufacturing. And the theme, the focus was mRNA. You would ask why? A future relevant technology, and this program provides access to mRNA knowledge and technology for multiple applications. We know that mRNA has specific properties, modalities that leans itself towards due diversification support, but we also know that a platform mRNA has therapeutic, infectious disease applications, but also agriculture, a very diverse platforms. And even today, if you listen to Drew Weissman, the applications now in vivo therapeutics for gene therapy and monoclonal antibodies. So certainly access of relevance for future pandemic preparedness. So the first aspect of this program, it's very platform orientated, building a conventional platform for mRNA production, process development, but at the same time, immediately, with the sense of affordability and cost of goods, also engage in research programs to develop second-generation technologies and address some of the challenges that mRNA vaccines still presents today in terms of thermostability. One of the critical outputs of this program is the establishment of a hub in South Africa, an end-to-end research development and GMP manufacturing facility. The hardware and the details of systems, management systems that will allow vaccine innovation and will allow the production of clinical trial materials, but more than that, would allow within a period of 21 days to be converted as a center for pandemic preparedness if we ever need to have that at the continent of Africa. This is the network. What is very critical is that capacity building and sharing knowledge with this network was a key priority. Even at the time when the lab scale developments only commenced in Afrigen in South Africa, this network already received the first knowledge transfer. And to date, we have trained 14 out of the 15 partners in these 15 countries, 4 continents, representing more than 3 billion people to do lab-scale mRNA production. We have started transfer of technology packages and will continue to do so by end of next year, transfer through those partners who are ready to receive the turnkey 6-liter batch of GMP batches to partners. These are public-private partnerships of great diversity. Very important, human talent. We've heard that over the last few days. Tomorrow and the day after, we're building the talent that will carry the knowledge and transfer the knowledge and engage in local manufacturing. The question for this program is Quo Vadis post-COVID. This was created as a response to the pandemic. How do we ensure that it sustains pandemic preparedness? And one of the key elements of this is the collaborations that drives innovation. The program has already engaged in a number of focus areas for future innovation around mRNA platforms, DNA and RNA development, manufacturing technologies, not only cost but also speed, alternative delivery mechanisms, formulation research around thermostability, and additional disease targets of great importance for long-term sustainability, building that pipeline. This slide represents the list of priority pathogens that the 15 partners on the 4 continents has listed as vaccine targets that they would like to engage with. The 4 red ones already listed here are projects which already are in early stage of development. TB and gonorrhea, certainly very important for antimicrobial resistance. The gonorrhea project vaccine is a prophylactic vaccine with unique qualities and properties and innovation designed through an AI program in partnerships. Rift Valley fever relevant for West Africa. This is a program that already now looking at pipeline to develop, to keep those facilities once they are up and running, operational and in pandemic preparedness mode, as well as contributing to unmet needs in public health. And I very proudly like to also indicate here how these global collaborations have been fostered over the last 18 months in multiple countries and multiple regions, addressing those 5 priorities and innovation for the mRNA program. And for South Korea, proudly like to share our appreciation and our gratitude for the partnerships and the collaborations that has been formalized and has been finalized with companies here in Korea. And I've listed them here. IVI, the collaboration with IVI and a number of vaccine targets is of profound importance to this program. Not only the training programs that they have supported us with having people in Africa, Afrigen, in South Africa, in Cape Town, supporting our training of our new staff, which has grown from 20 to 144 in 18 months, but also working now with us on a concept document for Rift Valley fever vaccine, a One Health approach, both a human and a veterinary vaccine. and then a consortium with collaborating with a number of people, with a number of companies, IVI and QuadMed here in Korea, looking at the application of novel delivery technologies for mRNA utilizing MAPS, microarray patches. Lemonex and Afrigen together putting together proposals and currently being considered by funders to utilize the proprietary formulation technologies of Lemonex and testing that with AfriVac 2121, our current Wuhan monovalent vaccine candidate that we use to validate the platform, a part of innovation around thermostability. iGene and Afrigen now engaging in collaborations again around freedom to operate, novel formulations, and also thermostability and affordability for vaccines for mRNA vaccines for low middle income countries. And our collaboration with Genentech around CAR-T. You may know that the LNP formulations for mRNA vaccines are also suitable for formulations for CAR-T and DNA therapies for in vivo applications, which is the next wave of applications for mRNA and making monoclonal antibodies affordable to people also in low middle income countries. And we will continue to foster our partnerships with the Korean companies. We found you highly engaging and hugely competent and scientifically fundamentally strong. Great partnerships to help us build. I have to revert back a bit to mRNA. I think that will also come out in the next discussions. Is what are the future technologies? If we today look at the mRNA vaccine and therapeutic landscape, it is interesting to note that only 17% of the products in mRNA products in development are focusing on infectious diseases. The majority is for cancer applications, metabolic diseases, solid tumors, and genetic disorders. mRNA will continue to evolve as the science is strengthened and take its rightful place and have impact in the public health domain. And interesting, if you look at how this evolved and where these companies are located, in the last 18 months to 2 years, more than 264 mRNA entities have been created globally. Still very few in low middle income countries, and particularly in the southern hemisphere. These are evolving. It is critical for us to ensure that we have access to mRNA technologies for low middle income countries, also to have the ability to produce affordable and new generation of medicines. The mRNA program has a quest to provide this access and to enable that through the support of the WHO. And my final slide is to say thank you to our partners, our funders, our collaborators, a global effort, and mostly to WHO for supporting us every step of the way in building this program and its relevance for public health and pandemic preparedness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Terre Blanche, for your presentation of the role of Afrigen. Gives us a lot of hope on the future with mRNA technologies and its multiple applications. Now we are turning to our last speaker. So I welcome Professor Dr. Hayato Urabe, Associate Vice President of Global Health Innovative Technology Fund. Dr. Urabe, the floor is yours.
So I don't have any slides. Yes. So should I talk sitting down or sitting up, or it's up to you?
You are in the right place.
Okay,
go ahead.
I'm in the right place. Okay, great. 안녕하세요. Thank you very much for inviting us. We're from GHIT Fund. For those of you who have never heard of GHIT Fund, it's GHIT, Global Health Innovative Technology Fund. We are a public-private partnership fund. We're funded 50% by the government of Japan, both from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Health, through UNDP, as well as 25% coming from Gates Foundation and the Wellcome Trust, the foundations, and another 25% representing the pharmaceutical companies both from Japan and global. Maybe this structure you may have heard. Of course, I don't have any slides to show you, but this essential public-private partnership model is very similar to what you see at the Wright Foundation, which many of you might know in the audience. So essentially, we're a product development fund. We've been around for 10 years. We've just had our 10th year anniversary with over $300 million invested and committed into malaria, tuberculosis, and neglected tropical diseases up until now. And we just pledged $200 million from the government of Japan at the G7 summit in May for us to get into this, to continue our work in malaria, TB, and NTDs, but also to work in the pandemic preparedness aspect as well. So this is where our activities is coming in that essence. So with this additional $200 million that was basically committed by the Japanese government, and we're actually the only organization to be mentioned by our Prime Minister to be able to continue to this work. And why is it relevant for us? Of course, we've been doing malaria, TB, and neglected tropical diseases, but the lessons that we have learned in the last 10 years in malaria, TB, and NTDs, if you think about pandemic preparedness, a lot of the countries that were affected, maybe in the low middle income countries, we have a lot of significant presence in low middle income countries, and we understand that a lot of what we call the neglected tropical diseases or neglected diseases warriors, people who are working on the ground, they have been also working on the capacity building on those people on the ground has actually helped with regards to the capacity building on the ground has helped with the pandemic preparedness, and a lot of the technology as well as people were repurposed or in that aspect as well. So something like the target product profile or fast registration or coordinated clinical trials, necessity for access mechanism, capacity building on the ground, and local manufacturing, all these factors that we have to consider in working in neglected tropical diseases of malaria and TB are quite relevant in this topic on pandemic preparedness. And in fact, there was a paper on BMJ that NTD preparedness or neglected tropical disease preparedness is actually a barometer of pandemic preparedness. And I thought it was a quite interesting way of capturing that. And I have very quick 7 points in terms of the therapeutics and pandemic preparedness, and some of them learning coming from the 100 Days mission for the vaccines created by CEPI. So just going very quickly. One is approaching the viral families, I think, in terms of therapeutics. Instead of targeting one by one, going to viral families is important. And of course, you have to have, this is going to be the first line of defense, and knowing the priority list, basically, whether it's coming from WHO or CDC or different entity. Of course, Japan has its own priority list, and I would imagine Korea would have their own pandemic list. So knowing what the priority lists are, and then approach it via viral families. Second, clinical trial infrastructure and readiness with standard protocols. I think it has already been mentioned by our colleagues, the essential nature of the clinical trial networks. Third is the biomarker for immune response and protection. Yes, you're targeting the viruses themselves, but you also want to look at the potential immunomodulatory effect that it has on the body when you're looking at the how you're going to be combating these diseases. And the fourth point is a global capacity of manufacturing, rapid and local manufacturing. I think Jitsuya mentioned about that earlier, and then making sure about the quality assurance. And I think that was also mentioned by Unitaid as well. And then fifth point is global laboratory capacities for early characterization of pathogen and epidemiological monitoring. And I think that also relates to my sixth point about the rapid and coordinated triggering mechanism. At what point are you going to be triggering, let's say, the fake analysis or the PHIEIC, the public announcement when emergency, how and what point is that going to be triggered, and how are you going to be working towards that? And then the last point, seventh, this is something maybe a little bit maybe fluffy in contents, but I think asking ourselves and asking, have we done everything that we can? We have all these smart people gather in this room, but asking us, are we in a silo? Are we not thinking outside the box? This kind of comes back to maybe if you know Elon Musk, the guy who made Tesla. I mean, he comes back to this first principle. You just keep on asking why. Someone like Toyota, they have this concept of asking why 5 times. If you think something is not possible, you ask 5 times why, then you get into this reason of this. Maybe you have this false assumption that you start off with, but it's something that we have dear in mind that we're trying to see to get to the root of our assumptions is something I think it's very important. And then also, by doing that, we're actually trying to be able to engage with younger generation as well. I think it was mentioned by our colleague from Afrigen as well, but it has to be intergenerational as well. I think this world is not going to just continue with everyone here, but also the younger generation is going to also be needing to feel the need for the pandemic preparedness. And I think that sort of generational aspect or generational transition of knowledge is going to also be very important. So with that, I mentioned about public-private partnership for JHIT Fund, and I mentioned different 7 points, I think, which are quite important going through in the therapeutics. So with that, I pass you back to the moderator.
Thank you very much, Dr. Urabe. I will continue on your question, which is what are we missing? Are we missing something? And maybe that will be the first question for the panelists before I open the floor to the audience. Are we missing something in the preparation, in the pandemic preparedness? Are we missing something in the therapeutics? What needs to be done to enhance our cooperation to make sure that we have the right therapeutics when the next pandemic is going to hit us? So who wants to take that question first? Yes, Carmen, you can.
Maybe I can try to give some perspective. I think, and the last speaker from JHIT also addressed that, I think one of the things we had missed before is thinking that business as usual will work and not having this kind of conversation. So I again thank for the government of Korea and the Ministry of Health to have convened us, because this is the kind of conversations that we are missing. We need to see, as I said, the full picture. We need, when we are thinking on research and development, for those that are actually working as developers or industry, they really need to be talking to the end part. They need to think across the board on what is going to happen with that product, how to make it actually available for the people who need it as fast as possible. And sometimes we work in silos. Actually, many times we work in silos. So to me, one of the biggest enabler of a change here is these conversations now, calling to experts, and that can bring other perspective in each of our corners, I think will make us maybe advance faster. As it said, if you want to travel fast, go alone, but if you want to get very far away, we need to be all together, traveling together. So I think that's key.
Dr. Dong.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I add something. I think during the presentation, I noticed that one characteristic almost all, for most of speakers when talking about the access issue for therapeutic and preparedness. I see people think about holistic approach from R&D along the value chain. But the one thing I want to highlight it is the data intelligence, which we may do it better. So one colleague said we are from pandemic response to preparedness. It is true. COVID-19 caught us unprepared. So we are very agile to respond. And then we realize, yes, we need prepared. So nowadays, we need to change the word. We need saying pandemic preparedness to response. So we need to get us ready for next pandemic. What we need, data, intelligence. So look back what we did during the pandemic. A lot of agencies first embarked for activity to find solution, address the challenge facing by the global community. But we don't know how many players are there, what they are doing until now is something we need to figure out. Either duplication, this is a partner data, the collaborations. The second is the data, the capacity. We don't know what capacity do we have, R&D capacity, global production capacity, capability, where they are. So many agencies jump in to think about different region capacity. Can we do it earlier? We get this data, get this study timely and maintain it. When the next pandemic, we don't know X, when it will come, what it is, but we are ready. We know where we are, where is the capacity, what are gaps. We can jump into action quickly. So this is what I want to highlight, data, intelligence, get us ready. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Mook.
Okay, during my talk, I couldn't tell the details because it's a little bit out of focus of our topics. This time, I'd like to focus on and suggest that I have some lesson from the last pandemic. That's we should change the law. Law itself is a big hurdle to accomplish our remedy to the COVID-19 like new virus attack. So today, many of us are the science-oriented the people, but the most important point is the law itself. For example, get an approval from regulatory bodies. It depends upon the laws of each country. So every country has their own law. So we should obey and follow the instruction of law. So during this type of a global summit, we will talk about how to change the law and the harmonization of a global law to get an approval or control the development, the processes of that. So from next summit, I'd like to suggest that we should create one more session to dealing with changing the laws in the worldwide. So the law means there's some kind of a sustainability for the futures. The law was once made, then it should be followed and obeyed. So the science itself is not enough, but so it's acceptable level at this time. But we should create such kind of structures to maintain and sustain for the futures. So that's my suggestions for the future structures to fight against a new virus attack. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mook. I think the pandemic treaty is one of the way to change the law. Hopefully, we'll get something meaningful out of this process. Dr. O'Brien?
Yep, thank you, Laurent. I think it's a great question to answer what's missing. I think it's really important also to actually think about the fact that before the COVID-19 pandemic, the ecosystem for different therapeutics in terms of development and access was not in a great situation anyway. It was very badly damaged, very broken in terms of bringing forward treatment options, and antibiotic resistance is a good example of that. It is actually a public issue now. It was before the pandemic. It's probably changed somewhat in its emphasis after the pandemic. But I think it's important to make sure we still address those underlying problems and be able to pivot those and accelerate those in terms of a pandemic. Because I think that's one of the issues we had before COVID-19, is that we had such challenges across all the therapeutics and vaccines that it was only because of great leadership and great activity that we're able to accelerate certain vaccines in that time. But I think it's a personal view as a citizen, actually. I think we did it somewhat luck to some degree. If you look now, some of those pharmaceutical companies that have went back into vaccines at the time of COVID are suddenly pulling out again. That's a concern. The point I really want to make is that what we need to do is make sure we have a good mix of public and private incentives and funding to ensure there is a healthy ecosystem. In antibiotics, there is a really need to incentivize companies to stay in the research and development of antibiotics. There are a number of initiatives ongoing there. The UK and Sweden, as an example, but there should be others. Japan just announced recently as well. But those incentives are probably not enough to really address some of the access points that I raised today. It's also not enough really to address incentives that generic companies need to continue to supply the antibiotics we need now and also in the future. The other key area that I do think needs to be focused on is that in the absence of a pandemic, you still need companies who are willing to take on the market authorization holder and fulfill the license requirements for a therapeutic, in antibiotics in my case, in many different countries. We can't always rely on emergency procedures outside a pandemic. So if we really address some of those things in advance of a pandemic, we may be able to then have a better infrastructure to pivot when the emergency is upon us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Lee, you want to add something?
Actually, I'm in the Celltrion, which is the private company. So when we developed the Lekirona, actually our company sacrificed our main business. Our main business is biosimilar development, not the monoclonal antibody development for the infectious disease. So I think it's very important to maintain the investment, as explained during my presentation, by government and the public research organization like the CEPI or the Life Fund in Korea. So the best scenario, I think, if we can expect the next pandemic, the timing and the virus, the information, based on that, actually, we will start our preparation to develop the antiviral and vaccine and so on. But it's not possible. So that's the reason we are monitoring the expected upcoming virus, and based on that, actually, we are developing the antiviral and the vaccines, and in case of our company, the monoclonal antibody against the infectious disease. So I think sometimes it's very difficult to maintain the budget in government because, as I mentioned, it's not possible to expect when the next pandemic is coming. So sometimes the government will not invest much money for this area. So I think the basic strategy for next pandemic is to maintain budget in government for next pandemic, and based on that, actually, we will invest platforms such as mRNA platform for vaccine. In case of Celltrion, actually, though, we are trying to construct potential mAb therapeutics against upcoming viruses, things like that.
Thank you for flagging the importance of maintaining post-COVID investment. Government have a tendency to move to other priorities and forget what happened. Professor Terblanche.
Thank you. I agree with all the points made by the panelists, but I want to introduce two. First, let's not forget the people. I fear that in many of these forums where we discuss, we forget about the 8 billion people who actually is the last mile. And secondly, for my own continent, the healthcare system We can create capacity, build skills, do R&D, but if we do not fundamentally ensure that the healthcare system can support us, we will fail in all our efforts.
Yes. Dr. Rabe, final word?
Great. No, thank you. Thank you for picking up my question, and thank you all the panelists for answering that. I think I also agree with what everyone said. But I think it can be categorized to top-down approach, maybe government-led initiative policy, and then maybe the bottom-up portion about product development or different approaches. And then, of course, Petra just mentioned, people. I think it's the side approach. So I think maybe it's a very generic way of maybe finishing this, but I think we have so many people in this room today, but I think pandemic preparedness itself, for it to get visibility and attention it needs, I would like to see maybe everyone talk about this topic at home to maybe those people who are not experts at this particular topic, and that talking to layperson and being able to get their support and let them understand what we're really doing. I think that kind of has a key to everyone's understanding, and then eventually that would also move the policy, considering the constituency, etc. And then also that would also accelerate the product development. So I hope everyone will be able to talk about this importance of pandemic preparedness, tonight when you go home, and then raise awareness at home, and then that would hopefully go viral, and everyone will talk about it, and we'll be all prepared. So back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there any question in the audience? I think we have time for one or two.
Please raise your hand. We will hand over the microphone to you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
네, 뒤쪽에 계신 여성분 잠시 일어나 주실까요? Can you please stand up?
Thank you for the excellent panel. I'm working with Doctors Without Borders, also known as MSF. So I think in this session, what we see is that there seems to be a general agreement on the need to also invest on the current disease areas, but also investing in future pathogens that with pandemic potentials. But then given that researching on potential pandemic pathogens is a very risky investment by nature to attract private investments, so investing in these pathogens is realistically something that mostly high-income country governments will be able to put their budget into. So that being the case, how can you ensure that the public investment in the R&D for these priority pathogens can lead to potential tech transfers for the low and middle income country manufacturers when the needs arise in the next pandemic?
Excellent question. I don't know who wants to take it in 2 minutes.
Maybe
Yeah,
I'll risk it in working with MSF and also the mRNA program. This is an interesting program, and it does present a model for de-risking high-risk development for vaccines for neglected diseases. And again, the WHO, through the partnerships being put together, where this program is actually publicly funded, is a model that one could pursue, and that I hope that we will be able to demonstrate that it is sustainable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
There is
think we do
one
have
question
one
in the
more.
back.
Can you please stand up, gentlemen? We're now passing the microphone right there. Yes, sir.
Thank you. And thank you for an interesting panel. My name is Ricardo Late. I'm the CEO at Health AI, the global agency for responsible AI in health, but also the founder and president of the Unite Parliamentarians Network for Global Health, a network of current and former legislators from more than 100 countries around the world. And listening to you, it becomes very clear the importance of policy in this discussion to drive not only R&D for us to be better prepared to prevent and respond to pandemics in the future, but also to ensure regional leadership as required and requested following COVID by many of the regional leaders. We have a pandemic accord being negotiated right now. It will be voted in May 2024 at the World Health Assembly. It is our firm conviction that if we do not get this done by May, it may never happen. And so out of your experience, I would like to hear what are we missing to get the global consensus that is needed to be able to get a positive vote for the pandemic treaty or accord at the next World Health Assembly in May. What can we do to make it happen? Thank you very much.
Who wants to take it?
Things is currently this INB discussion is ongoing in WHO. Let me try to answer this question, but I think it's not question, more than a comment. You made a very good summary on that. So first thing, I would encourage all the member states to raise your voice, get your voice heard in order to get consensus. Second, in facing of these global issues, we need to think about the global collective interest rather than individual interest. Because if you get 100% consensus, sometimes it's challenging, but we need to think what is our common challenges we need to address on it. What is a priority we need to address on it? The third part I want to highlight is a lot of discussion around the IP patents. And the first question also targets that. Actually, technology transfer, if you see the entire process, they have different components. Patent, licensing is one component. There are another component, what should we do? Encourage technology to be transferred and absorbed. There are other elements you need to think about. Is get our industry technology recipient ready, have the capacity, take the technology, right, and take it and to implement the technology as it should be. This another things. Normally people not enough highlighted. Get the capacity there to absorb the technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are coming at the end of this panel. I would like just to conclude with two sentences. First of all, we have invested a lot in vaccine, but it's time now that we put also our money on future therapeutics. We don't know what is coming next, and to paraphrase what Dr. Dong said, we don't know what is coming next, but we are getting ready. So we are facing a lot of challenges, but there is a lot of hope as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And let's give another big round of applause to our esteemed moderator and panelists. Please now return to your seats. And ladies and gentlemen, we do have one last sequence of today's event. Please remain seated. And can you please go back to your seats? We will have a photo shoot right after clearing up the stage. Thank you. And at session 2, ladies and gentlemen, we've discussed on how to strengthen the capacity for the next possible pandemic. We also covered the current status of a therapeutic development, manufacturing, and supply, and also shared each country or organization or company's therapeutic development for the last 3 years. And we also did talk about global research cooperation. So now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for your participation and your interest until the very end of this session. And for your information, we'll soon start lunch break. And for your information, lunch box is prepared in the lobby. So you can take one and please be seated here inside our venue and please eat and enjoy this lunch break. And for those who just registered for GTHB, please make your way to the Grand Ballroom. Once again, if you're invited to Global Training Hub for biomanufacturing session, and if you are joining this luncheon, please make it to the Grand Ballroom. And I think we're almost ready to have this final photo shoot. We'd like to once again welcome our Commissioner Chi. Please come up to the stage. 지영미 청장님, 저희가 무대 위로 사진 촬영을 위해서 먼저 모시겠습니다. And once again, we'd like to welcome our panelists and our moderator. Please come up to the stage once again. And our speaker, please come up to the stage. 네, 소장님, 무대 위로 모시겠습니다. Thank you once again for your patience. Once again, thank you for your insight and thank you for sharing your wisdom. please look at the camera at the very center one. 네, 앞쪽 카메라 봐주시고요. 사진 촬영하겠습니다. Please make a big smile. 1, 2, 3. Smile. And last photo shoot, please give a big round of applause. Maintain your clapping. Look at the camera once again. Thank you very much. Please return to your seat. Once again, for those who are joining the Global Training Hub, please make your way to the Grand Ballroom on the 3rd floor. And ladies and gentlemen who are just joining this session, please enjoy your lunch break. Lunch box is prepared in the lobby. Please take one and please come inside this venue and please enjoy your lunch break as well. And ladies and gentlemen, we do have a session 3 starting from 1 p.m. here at same venue on the 5th floor. So please join us at the session 3 as well. Thank you once again for your participation. Please enjoy your lunch break. 네, 국내 참가자분들께 다시 한번 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 여러분, 지금부터는 점심 식사하실 텐데요. GTHB 글로벌 세션에 초대되신 분들께서는 그랜드 볼룸 3층으로 이동해 주셔서 저희 오찬을 함께 해주시고요. 또 현장에 계시는 일반 참석자분들께서는 로비에 마련된 런치박스를 한 개씩 가지고 다시 이쪽으로 들어와 주셔서 식사를 해주셔야 합니다. 여러분 식사 맛있게 하시고 저희는 오후 1시부터 이곳 같은 장소에서 세션 3 시작하겠습니다. 오늘 세션 3과 4는 이곳에서 진행이 될 예정이니 여러분 많은 관심과 또 참여를 부탁드리겠습니다. 고맙습니다.